Joining me now, the national editor at the Daily Telegraph, Sky News host James Morrow, and Sky News Northern Australia correspondent, the award-winning Matt Cunningham. I'll get to your award in a moment, Matt, at the end of this little segment, but I'll start with you, James, if I can. The opposition leader said to the PM, please don't go to San Francisco. We need you here. It's APEC. You've just met President Xi in China. You've just met President Biden in Washington. You and I both know the communique that they'll release after this summit. It's already been drafted. It'll be with the PM's office right now. It clearly hasn't listened because he got on the plane about 4 o'clock this afternoon. But politically, he's really got some big issues here at home to fix, hasn't he?
He's got massive issues, Peta, and I think Peter Dutton did a very good job today really articulating two of the big ones here. Number one, of course, the rising tide of anti-Semitism, and we had in the Daily Telegraph today reported about a Jewish school that wanted to hire a jumping castle, and the company that owned the jumping castle company said they wouldn't provide it because the school had Zionist blood on their hands, or words to that effect. So people are rightly really concerned about what's happening there. And then, of course, there's also the issue of the 83 detainees who've been released, and some of these are really, really horrible criminals. I'm talking child rapists, things like that. Again, released because the High Court has said, oh, well, you can't have indefinite detention anymore. And the government, again, appears to be flat-footed on that. Now, you combine that with the economic situation and other things that are going on, people think the country is on the wrong track. And I don't have any problem, Peta, with the Prime Minister going around the world to sell Australia, do what they need to do diplomatically. But boy, he is needed here at home, not just for his party, but for the country.
Those comments today, and I played them there from the Home Affairs Minister saying she can't legislate to fix this issue of the 83 foreign criminals. And then, of course, the Deputy Prime Minister saying, well, actually, we are. We're looking at legislation. And then pressure from the Greens, and this is happening quite a lot, you know, that the left of Labor are really pushed even further to the hard left by the Greens. They went out very hard saying you can't do a deal with Peter Dutton. Have a listen.
Peter Dutton's been demonising and being cruel to refugees for decades. It would be an utter disgrace if Labor were to work with Peter Dutton to collude with him to jam it through the Parliament this week. It looks like Labor is now going to jump into bed with Peter Dutton, who's built a career on cruelty to refugees, and write legislation to continue that cruelty.
I might say many of these people are not refugees. Greens use that language all the time. Matt Cunningham, they've been looked at, assessed, they've been found not to be refugees. It's just that the countries they've come from, because they're criminals, refuse to take them back, and so we are stuck with them. But this is an issue, isn't it? It's cut right through the community at the moment, hasn't it?
Oh, it absolutely has, and Labor's been all over the shop on this today. I mean, the contrast between Clare O'Neil's comments and Richard Marles' comments, both on Breakfast TV this morning, in complete contradiction of one another. You know, you had Clare O'Neil, the Home Affairs Minister, saying, you know, that we couldn't overrule the decision of the High Court, and then you had Richard Marles saying the opposite. Then you've had Penny Wong in Senate question time this afternoon saying that that the government will legislate on this issue, and that they're hoping to get the opposition's support to do it. I mean, deep down, Labor knows that on issues like this, particularly when it comes to immigration, that if they get pulled too far to the left, they're going to be in all sorts of trouble. I mean, it's cost them elections before. You know, if you look back to 2013, when the coalition campaigned hard on Labor's performance on border protection, you know, that was a massive issue in Labor losing government back then. I think that Labor really want to sort this one out quickly. I think the opposition leader knows that he's hitting a real sore point within Labor, and he knows that there's fractures within the Labor Party about this issue. That's what he's trying to exploit. I think that some of the wiser heads in Labor will be trying to get this sorted sooner rather than later.
I'm sorry, James, but we've just had confirmation, haven't we, in the last few hours from the United States, from intelligence operations there in Washington, to say that there is now confirmation, evidence confirmation, that there is the use of hospitals in Gaza by terror organisation Hamas. This is what we've talked about, this being something that is rumoured. It's now confirmed.
Well, it's confirmed by the U.S., but Peta, I mean, Israel has been saying this for ages, so I don't know why we need the U.S. to confirm something that Israel has already said when, of course, people seem to be willing to take the Hamas Ministry of Health, as Orwellian a name as that is, for its word. They should take Israel for its word, too. The important thing about this, too, is that in Article 19 of the Geneva Conventions, once a hospital becomes used by a militant group or a military for military offensive purposes, which is what is happening here, it loses its protected status. So this again underlines the way that Hamas so cynically uses Palestinian people, Arab people, to create this sort of situation where they get all of this sympathy for being just plain evil.
Matt, just on that issue today, it mightn't seem like a big thing to some people that a Jewish school asked for a quote for a jumping castle for an event for kids and was told they wouldn't have it because this company in Western Sydney wouldn't provide any goods and services to Jews. They then said, well, we're not against Jews, we're against Israel. Well, hang on, this is a school in Sydney, it wasn't a school in Jerusalem. But I have to say, we all remember Bill Leak. He had a cartoon calling out an uncaring Aboriginal parent. Well, he was absolutely taken to the cleaners through all of those human rights organisations that exist. How do they go after issues about a cartoon and the myriad of human rights bodies in this country, anti-racism bodies, anti-discrimination bodies, are basically silent at the moment on anti-Semitism?
Well, yeah, that was absolutely terrible what happened to Bill Leak, and his family members believe that it helped drive him to an early death. And that wasn't the only case. There was a Catholic bishop in Tasmania who was hauled through a similar process because he was distributing flyers opposed to the same-sex marriage plebiscite. Here in Darwin, I remember we had a barber who was hauled before the Anti-Discrimination Commission because she ran a men's barber shop and she refused to give a woman a haircut. These are the sort of things that, these commissions have been getting themselves tied up in knots about, and yet here we have a clear case of religious and racial discrimination, and we haven't heard boo from them at this point. I thought it was interesting in Kenny Heatley's report on this issue today. He said that under this Act, under this Anti-Discrimination Commission, that religious discrimination is not actually part of that. It's only, Jewish people only fall under that because they're considered a race for the purpose of this legislation. So I think there's a loophole there as well, because I think, to be refusing people a service of any kind, whether it's a jumping castle or whether it's a plumber or an electrician, because they are of a particular faith or a particular race, is something that has no place in this country.
And we know too, James Morrow, we've got a case in Tasmania. A counsellor has been taken to official task over the fact that she referred to a trans woman as remaining a biological male. Well, that's a statement of scientific fact.
Well, yeah, and I mean, Peter, it's so funny in all these cases, in Australia, we love to say that we trust the science, we believe in science. Oh, the holy, blessed science tells us things. And yet when somebody, goes against what is now the woke ideology, which of course means that science can be bent to mean anything that they want it to mean, of course you're in trouble. And this is just the whole problem here. If you cannot say that A is A, that a biological male is a biological male, somebody born a certain way, their chromosomes, which they cannot change, then science becomes such a captured institution of politics, and we cannot rely on it any more than we can these human rights bodies that are using science to perpetrate their own very unscientific agendas.
Just let's go to the broader issue of migration and the cost of living crisis, Matt Cunningham, and this real squeeze on housing. Bruce Chapman, he's the bloke who designed the HEX scheme all those years ago. He's an economist. He's now backing a new $1 billion a year levy that he wants to see, and others do, on international students on their fees. The group of 8 universities, they're the most prestigious in the country. They say this is basically an envy tax. I don't know, I reckon it's pretty fair, given half the PM's current migrant intake are international students. They're helping push up rents and cause us all the other issues that are fueling inflation. What do you think?
Well, I'd like to thank Bruce first of all for keeping me poor into my early 30s, Peter. But I think it is
Me too.
it is a good idea. You know, you look at. I read the story about this in the Australian, and we're talking about these universities taking in $10 billion through international students. So if you've got a tax of 5 to 10%, you're talking about $500 million to $1 billion that can go back into the federal government's coffers at a time when that money is much needed. I think another thing that was interesting, reading the comments of Professor Chapman, was, talking about how we can get more people who come from regional areas of this country to university. I mean, one of the great things I had growing up was parents who wanted me to go to university and a system that allowed me to do that. But it's getting harder and harder for people like me who grew up in country Victoria to get a spot in one of our top universities. So, aside from all the points you make about inflation and about housing and all of these other issues, I think also we should be trying to give a fair go to people from remote and regional Australia who also want a place in our top universities.
Spot on. I'm a country kid too, and I agree with you, Matt. And I'm about to go to a break, but I want to say too, I haven't spoken to you since you got the top award at our recent News Corp awards night. A huge feather in your cap, absolutely well deserved for your reporting on the Northern Territory crisis in Alice Springs. I know you feel really deeply about the issue, and it's genuine. So well done to you, James Morrow. Thank you.